participated in the civil rights movement. So every time I come through here,
they got a
always
ranger
touch
out here
this.
explaining that
So I don't forget. You know, this thing was paid for. And I'm not talking about the $120 million. I'm talking about the lives of individuals who put their lives, their bodies on the line for this movement. One of the things I wanted to talk about is just the memorial itself. If we came in through the front, if we had this opportunity, what you would see is a panoramic view of the Mountain of Despair, and you would see the Stone of Hope. Now, when the designer first designed this, it was supposed to be, the Stone of Hope was supposed to be right in the center, as if it had been eaten out of the Mountain of Despair and just pushed forward. Now, that's the way it was originally supposed to be. But when you would come in that way, it would look as if you were coming into a wall. And so they decided to push this stone over. But look at what we get. For those of you who are standing about right here, you can almost see what I'm talking about. If we were outside, we would see this Mountain of Despair, Stone of Hope, and as you look across the tidal basin, it appears to be a road that travels down and turns off to the right. Those of you who are standing here, you can see that. Well, what's beyond that bend? We don't know. But that's how life is. There is a journey that has to be taken. We know we have to take it, but we don't know what turns. We don't know what's beyond the next turn. But I want you to remember that, because I'm going to bring that up again at the end of my talk. As I said, this memorial, the ideas of this memorial pretty much came from Doc's frat brothers, brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And they wanted to have a memorial for Doc. So there are like three components that have to take place. You have to get a design. So the first thing is they submit a design, and they have a contest, 300 submissions. This is the one that won out. They're looking for, they see this pink shrimp marble in Fresno, California. And they're like, oh, this might work, this might work. They saw it in the Stone Garden. And they said, okay, let's keep this in the back of our minds. So they remember this, and they remember where they saw it. Now, you've got to get a sculptor. How do we find things nowadays? Google it. Well, they Googled sculptors. And they found out that there was going to be a sculptors convention in St. Paul, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So they go there. And you've got the best of the best in one spot. So they go to a sculptor and say, hey, listen, this is what we're trying to do. Would you be interested in doing this? Oh, yeah, this is great. Oh, I'd love to do this. But you might want to talk to that guy over there. They go to another sculptor. Look, this is what we're doing. Would you be interested? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do this. But you might want to talk to that guy over there. They go to a third sculptor. Oh, yeah, I'd love to do this. But you might want to talk to that guy over there. They finally go to the guy over there. The guy over there is Master Lay. Now, Master Lay is recommended by his peers, unbeknownst to each other. Nobody, it wasn't like one person said, hey, try that guy. You try this one. No, they all looked at the same, they all recommended the same guy. Now, why do I say that? Because I get the question, why couldn't they have found an American to do this?
Right. Right.
I get the question, why couldn't they have found an African American to do this?
Right.
The foundation was looking for the best in the world. Now, let me ask you this question. You're having heart surgery next week. Who do you want to do it?
Best.
You want the best. You don't care where they live. You want the best. On that particular day, Master Lay was the best in the world. 15, 20 years from later, maybe somebody else. But on that day, it was Master Lay. They remembered about this granite. They're like, we saw this granite in Fresno. Where the only place you can get this is in China. So that answers the question, why a sculpture from China? Why the stone from China? So I told you about coming through here and seeing the Stone of Hope. One of the questions that I always get is, why doesn't I have a dream in here?
Right.
I'm glad you asked that question. Listen, the question's not so bad. I think what got to me was the very first time somebody had asked that question. He was kind of belligerent. He's like, How come I Have a Dream isn't in here? I haven't seen it. Sir, I Have a Dream is here. I know it's not. I didn't look on both sides. Matter of fact, I Have a Dream should be on this entire wall.
Right.
Well, I'm like, okay. I said, sir, it is here. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. It's right there.
Where?
Out of a mountain of despair, a stone of hope.
Oh, that's part of it.
And he says, well, I wasn't talking about that, but I'm talking about the I Have a Dream part. I'm thinking to myself, this person probably has never even read Dr. King's I Have a Dream, let alone seen the speech. I was in a conversation with one of my coworkers. As a matter of fact, she's working here. And I said, you know, if you take the last 5 minutes of Dr. King's speech away, the I Have a Dream speech out, and just put it on paper and somebody read it, you would probably say, this is an angry individual. He's got some pretty serious accusations going on here. Another lady says to me, she says, I have a dream. It's the most important part of his speech. Well, I have to take a deep breath and count to 10. I'm thinking, how do I address this? And I said, ma'am, it may be the most recognized part of his speech. A lot of people would argue that wasn't the best part of the speech. Let's look at that speech. It's 1963. During April, he's protesting down in Birmingham. Doc goes to jail on Good Friday. He writes what ends up becoming his letter from a Birmingham jail. They ended up, at some point, they end up marching the kids. And what happens when they march those kids? The police put police dogs on them and fire hoses. This water's coming, this isn't a garden hose. This stuff has come out 100 pounds per square inch. There are pictures, people standing against the walls trying to shield themselves from these fire hoses. And these same fire hoses are taking bark off of trees. Everybody's like, you know what, it's one thing we do that to adults, but doing it to kids, enough was enough. President Kennedy got involved and they start talking about civil rights legislation. Well, Doc and others are thinking that this thing needs to go national. People need to see what's going on in the United States. And so they have the March on Washington. 1963, Doc comes here. He's the last person to speak. And he starts his argument out by saying, he talks about the Emancipation Proclamation 50 years ago. Well, Doc, why couldn't you have just said 100 years ago? Or why couldn't he have just simply said 1863? Because he is tying his argument in with Lincoln's Gettysburg Address and his Emancipation Proclamation. He's making ties to the fathers of this nation. He also talks about the Constitution. He mentions the Declaration of Independence. Why is he doing it? Because he's tying his argument in with Jefferson and the rest of the founding fathers. At one point, Doc talks about, he says, the reason why we're here is because we are coming here to cash a check that has been promised by the founding fathers. And he says this check, this promissory note has come back marked insufficient funds. In America? After World War II, the United States fared better than any other belligerent in World War II. Stalin said we were the great, the arsenal of democracy. We were providing stuff to everybody. And after World War II, we were providing cars, refrigerators, everything to everybody. Everybody had money. And we had it then. And Doc says, hey, you know, we're not doing right where our people of color are concerned. In this land of plenty is what he's saying. But he doesn't leave us on a negative note. He says, we refuse to believe that the vaults of opportunity are bankrupt in this great nation. Doc talks about, he says, at one point, I gotta tell you this story. At one point, Doc is preaching this message, and he says, when he gets to the I Have a Dream part, the first thing he says is, I still have a dream. It's a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. Listen, Doc was not hallucinating. Doc wasn't just grabbing something out the sky. He was basing this dream on the American dream. But what was the American dream? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The same thing Jefferson and those guys had written. So Doc is going through this thing. Now, I've heard this story a few times, and I'm putting this thing together. I need to find something on Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia Jackson is one of the greatest gospel singers probably of all time. Well, Reverend C.T. Wyatt T. Walker was on Doc's staff. And I heard him in an interview. He says, listen, he says, you know, we had heard that I Have a Dream ended about 20, 30 times. We thought that thing was getting kind of tired. He needed to do something else. And there is a recording of Doc speaking at Cobo Hall in Detroit early in 1963. And he ends with that same I Have a Dream type of theme. So I'm like, okay, he probably did use this ending a few times. Well, and there's also a story that he was over at the Willard Hotel, finishing the ending of his I Have a Dream speech, right? So Doc is up here about to finish his I Have a Dream speech. And Mahalia Jackson, I've heard this from two different sources, Mahalia Jackson is standing there saying, tell him about the dream. Tell him about the dream. Apparently, he was going to have a different ending. And he starts by saying, I still have a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. And he starts to finish, he picks up on that theme and he starts to finish it out. He finishes it by starting to say, let freedom ring. And he'll say something. He says, let freedom ring. I just realized what he was connecting to at that point. Easter Sunday, 1939, Marian Anderson sings on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. She was supposed to sing at DAR Constitution Hall.
That's right.
She's African American, classical singer. Well, they tell her, yeah, you can sing here, but you got to come in through the kitchen, and no other African Americans are going to be able to listen to you. Won't be able to come. She's not going for that. Well, Mrs. Eleanor Roosevelt, the wife of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, gets involved in the process. Because of that, Mrs. Anderson is able to sing on the steps of Lincoln Memorial. So he even makes a connection with that. So Doc ends the speech, and everybody's excited. I mean, everybody who heard it is excited about it. Less than 4 weeks later, down in Birmingham, the 16th Street Baptist Church is bombed on Sunday morning, killing 4 little girls who are in Sunday school. Well, it's obvious. It's obvious that that was reprisal for these kids marching a few months earlier. And then a few weeks after that, President Kennedy's assassinated. I heard a conversation, Reverend Walter Fontroy. He says, we all sat around and we watched that. He said, we all had lumps in our throat. He says, we knew if they could get a president, oh, they could definitely get Martin. Doc used to always joke about his funeral. He used to say, hey, you know what? All you guys trying to be in the front, the bullet may be intended for me, but it's going to probably end up hitting one of you guys. And he'd go through and he'd preach everybody's funeral. He'd preach Andy Young's funeral. He'd preach Jesse Jackson's funeral. He would do that to keep it light. But that was something he dealt with all the time. So in 1964, you know, they finally passed the Civil Rights Bill. President Johnson does it.